tradition a little bit, and when I screw up, you guys, especially the parents, moms, dads, wives, spouses, significant others, if I say something that you don't know what the hell it is, say stop. Just like your punks have been taught to do. Say stop, go with that. And I'll explain that, because it sucks for my wife how many times she's done this and how many parents have sat through these things and have no idea what the person's talking about. So when you hear an acronym that you don't know, just say stop and I'll try to correct it. That'll make me better, hopefully. We'll see how that works out as we go from there. All right. My goal here is to provide the B coursers a last little bit of guidance and maybe some things to think about that are not exactly flying related, and we'll go from there. If I pull it off, you may laugh a little bit, you may tear up a little bit. We'll see how that works. Let's have some fun. Blanket, so to speak. What does that mean? Well, you'll figure it out. Fighter pilot wise, 10% rule, which by the standards of fighter pilots, all I have to do is say something that is 10% true, and this is a completely acceptable story. So, most of my stories will be a little bit more than that, but if I make some stuff up, one, you won't know, and two, it's all within the rules, so life is good. I've done this for 21 years flying the Viper, 26 years military, retired now. My oldest kid was born when Bruiser and I were in the B course together right after the air-to-air phase. So anybody that had a kid in the B course, like, welcome to the game. Life doesn't stop for your training. It just moves on, and you just have to figure it out. So it's been fun, and I've done it for a while. We have taught our graduates to speak and try to convey thoughts or their plan in as few words as possible while traveling at 500 knots. I'm no longer able to do that, so I just ramble on, and you guys will see that. But I'm going to try to get a few things out. Go with that on what?
Fewest words.
Fewest words, standard. Good point. I have never liked him since he was a B courser. Let's see how it goes. Speaking of limbo, this is probably what popped off back there. My first point. So, you'll hear a couple trends that one Sizzle already mentioned, Stormin, some common trends, right? One of them that I am a firm believer of in. I haven't got punk grind yet, but there you have it.
It's real.
You are only as good, punks, pay attention, and IPs who think you got it all figured out, you're only as good as your last flight. And if you haven't come to grips with that, then you've missed something. You're as good as your last flight. What does that mean? This business is always evolving. If you're not in the vault studying, if you're not practicing, if you're not willing to lead things and be better, then they're gonna pass you. And guess what? It's always a competition. Welcome to being a fighter pilot. So you're as good as your last flight. A couple things on that. Winston Churchill, love that guy. You must look at the facts because they look at you. What does that mean? In a debrief, we go over everything that happened, sometimes in 3 to 5 hour painful detail, because we're going to learn from everything, right? Don't walk over steps that are going to teach you something. Don't go past that. So make sure you get all the facts out of there. Fighter pilots, in general, are known for being arrogant. Amazingly good looking.
Yeah, that's right.
Gifted in the art of love.
That's right.
Persistent and larger than life.
Yeah.
Why is that? Cool. It gives us the right. What gives us the right to carry ourselves with such confidence? I still think I got it right. I will still go out and fly with Boone, the greatest fighter pilot in the universe, recently. Congratulations. Like, dude, if we hit the ops test tomorrow, I will own you, right? Until proven otherwise. But if you don't have that mentality in this business, you're already behind the game. I don't care if you're flying with the squadron commander, the patch, the greatest IP in the world. If you are not walking out the door thinking that you are better than everybody else, then you're probably in the wrong business. You're not. I guarantee you're not, especially the B coursers, right? But you got to have that mentality. It's what we do. It's a competitive life. Your life depends on a business. We're trained to kill the enemies for our country, and they're trained to kill us. Like, if that hasn't sat or sunk in yet, first time you suck rubber, the first time you deploy, the first time you hit master arm for real with real weapons, like, it's going to get your attention, and you better be ready, and your training is what gets you ready. I'm going to give you some facts, hopefully. These are not 10%. Raise your right hand if you're in the top of your commissioning source. IPs, everybody. Former fighter pilots, everybody. Raise your right hand. Don't be bashful. Raise your right hand if you were in the top 10% of your pilot training class. How many of you were? I know most of you were, right? They're afraid to show it, like, yeah, cool. You've consistently proven that you operate at a high level, right? Well, look around. Everybody that already put their hand down, welcome to the crowd. You're in the top 10%, and guess what? The next tier gets steeper, and then it gets steeper, and then it gets steeper. It's always a competition. Why? Because your life depends on it, and it makes us better. But realize you are surrounded by phenomenal people all around you. You are not as good as you think you are. You are great with a team, but by yourself, you're probably pretty good, but not great. We'll go from there. All of these students did something really good to get to where they are here, which is impressive, like most of us have. And your IPs that are teaching you, they continue to do that. A pilot training buddy of mine who stands about yay tall, Todd Riddle. I've got a book that I'm gonna hand out to all the B coursers that he wrote. It looks amazingly similar to that. Faith, family, and fighter jets. This dude was a youth minister when he showed up to our UPT class. I was like, huh. One, he looked about 15 years old. He just came out of a youth ministry program. I'm like, dude, we're here to be fighter pilots and break things, right? He's had about 9 deployments in the A-10, constantly deployed. He's done more things for his country than I can even think about. Like, the guy is amazing. He's got a great book with some great thoughts in there, right? So don't judge a book by a cover, literally. That dude, when I first looked at him, I'm like, you're in the wrong place, man. And he has had an amazing career as a fighter pilot. So be careful judging people too rapidly. One of the biggest points in his book that I think was amazing is when we process data, and I say this to students in the sim sometimes, fighter pilot sounds really sexy. But we are data processors. That does not sound sexy. We have the ability, proven ability, to take more data thrown at us in an airplane, in the weather, with combat, with avionics and everything else, process that data, make the best possible decision for the best possible outcome. And sometimes that's not a win, but it's the best possible outcome. Some people cannot operate at that speed, and those people don't fly fighters. And it's not against them, anything else, but like, it is a processor speed piece. It has to be something you can figure out. Fighter pilots. The B coursers, real quick, like really quick, or else your boss will get pissed at me. Come grab one of these books before I get about it. So the B courses, if you could, just come up and grab one. They're all signed by Todd Riddle. Real quick, and then go back to your seats. Hand those out. You bet. All right, well, they're figuring that out. Read books. It's amazing. I got into it late, but read some of the history, especially our military history. It's good for you. All right, some perspective for the family members out there and anybody else in the crowd if you haven't heard this. The Viper became operational in 76, or actually it was first flown in 76, operational at Holloman Air Force Base in 79. Since the inception of the Viper at MacDill, Hill, Holloman, Tucson, Guard units in the Midwest, as well as Kelly, we have produced roughly 8,000 Viper drivers. Let's break that down. We have 330 million people in the U.S., according to the last census. We have about 500,000 in the active duty, the reserves, and the Guard. If you do the math on that, which I had to over a coffee the other morning, that gets to a pretty small number. It's 0.0003% of the U.S. population is what your family member, your graduate, is now a part of. That's a pretty small number. Do the math on that. Let me help it out for you for the football fans. There are 1,700 professional football players on rosters playing football this weekend. There are 800 Viper drivers active duty in the Air Force. Think about it. They're special wingmen. They're special. And I mean special in a special way. This isn't because they fly the world's most widely deployed and combat-proven aircraft, which it is. It isn't because they can fly supersonic. It isn't because they can have an entire conversation holding a scotch while smoking a cigar and pointing at their big fighter pilot watch. It's because they are the mission. They are the mission. Be arrogant, be proud a little bit, but realize everyone at an Air Force base enables your mission. Everyone here. You get to be the sexy person that throws on the jet and goes in harm's way and hopefully comes back. But everyone at that base is enabling you to go do your mission. You just get to be the pointy end of the spear. So that's a responsibility and a pretty cool right, but you got to do it right. All right. I look around the crowd here, it makes me proud because, and Blitz isn't here, but let's see, Guard, Hide, Limbo, Tonic, Shock from the 314th, all B coursers in the past from Holloman. I probably missed somebody. Who else did I miss? I probably missed somebody that makes me a prick. And then Hans. Hans is off to go. He's like, you missed me, Fester. I had a special moment for you, dude. I'll throw it out. Even though you're a Warhawk, it's all good. I grew out of it, right? Hans is off pretty quickly. We got one or two others that are on their way to go to weapons school to be the instructors of the instructors. Like those guys were in the P course not too long ago. I'm not that old, so it was probably like last week, maybe a little bit longer. But like that's awesome. Maturation in this business is required. You don't meet 20-year wingmen like we all want to be, because that's just awesome. Blue 4 is great, but it's up or out. Like not just rank-wise, like you earn credibility, you become a flight lead, you become an instructor pilot, or we find something else for you to do because that's what this job entails. So, pretty important. Oh man, turning pages is the hardest part. So with all that work, you built the foundation. You are the foundation. You are also the weakest link. Welcome. Every one of your IPs and flight leads is going to rely on you and literally bet their life that you are going to do what you've been trained to do. And that will mean something the first time you see something explode around your airplane. Like you are the weakest link, but you're also part of the team, right? And that's not because you suck. It's because you were the least trained. You have the least amount of responsibility. You are by definition the wingman. Be the best wingman you can be until you get the opportunity to be something else. And that'll happen faster than you think. About 18 months from now, most of you are going to be into the flight lead upgrade program. And then after that, you're going to want to be an instructor pilot. And then after that, some of you will be lucky enough to go to weapons school, and you will come back and teach all the other instructor pilots. It's up. Like we always are learning. It's an amazing job. It's fun to do. Even as an old retired guy, like, oh great, we got a new document of tactics came out. Damn, I have to go read some more. It is what it is. All right. All right. On to point number 2. You will surprise yourself and others, hopefully in a good way. So, my first combat deployment, I was excited and nervous, like most people are. If you're not, you're probably a little too cocky, and you might get humbled. I went downrange to Al Jaber, Iraq, and that's in Kuwait, in case there was a question on that. And I had been operational for about 1.5 years. And what was cool, I was probably 1.5 months into the deployment before I got to drop any bombs and all that. The first person to drop in our squadron was, rightfully so, the squadron commander. Weird, like it just worked out that way, right? But who was on his wing? The youngest wingman in the squadron. 2 weeks before we deployed, Coma Hester became combat mission ready. 2 weeks before we deployed. And they put him on the boss's wing because he needed a little extra care and feeding. He's the newest wingman, right? So you put him with like the capable squadron commander, and he was at that point. It was awesome to watch that happen. He goes, gets tested, drops his bombs, does great, and earns Coma as his call sign for the rest of his life. Pretty cool. There are other people that I've seen where it didn't go that well on their first sortie, and you fight through it and you go fly the second one. But most of us step up. It's one of those things. He dropped a couple GBU-31s. My first drop was also GBU-31s. And 2 things I remember vividly on that drop. One, I did about 6 to 9, because that's what you do. T-class checks, your pre-attack checks. Somebody should have said stop data, but that's fine. We go through that as we go cruising there. We were flying a 4-ship of Vipers out of Jabber. We used to do no-fly stuff, where the MiGs would come up and we go chase them and they go back around. We'd take off with about 60 airplanes, and then we would all come back and land at the same time, and then Iraq would go do whatever they wanted to do while we were refueling and all that. Well, they said, hey, that doesn't sound good, so we're gonna have these alert fighters, which was us, 4 F-16s with not the best radar in the world, that we started launching. We committed on MiGs. I've committed on MiGs 3 times, got one of them on my radar, never shot one. But like we started doing this, and we started doing dynamic targeting. So I get called to go drop a bomb on this night. Me and Bull Mitchum was awesome. Flying into Al Qut, which is quite a ways way into Iraq, well beyond. There was no AWACS, Airborne Warning Control System, like the big airplane with the radar on top that lets us know where the bad guys are that are trying to kill us. That airplane, they were on the ground. There was a ground-based radar that we were about 50 miles past where they could see. So we were literally alone and concerned. I won't say afraid, but there we go, right? So we're cruising in. I'm doing my pre-attack checks. The first time I've ever dropped bombs or getting ready to. I'm like, don't screw this up. Please don't screw this up. Like, I mean, I'll never screw this up. I'm awesome, right? No. And I'm about 15 miles from the target, flying into night sortie with my night vision goggles. Bull Mitchum is on my right-hand side, and we're hitting a U-shaped building. And between us, AAA explodes at our altitude on MVGs. And I 100%, the first thing I thought was my flight lead just blew up. Because that's how big the explosion looked on MVGs. Now granted, MVGs, you can see someone smoking a cigarette in front of a Toyota Hilux from 20,000 feet. So they're pretty impressive, right? But when AAA blows up between you and your flight lead a mile and a half away from each other, it looks like a nuclear explosion. And that got my attention. Like really got my attention. First time that I went, holy shit, they're trying to kill me. Weird. So I channeled my best Luke Skywalker and went stay on target, dropped my bombs, which was fun and exciting, and then I turned around and ran away as fast as the airplane could fly, and we left the other two airplanes that were with us that still had bombs, and we talked to them when we landed. Now we didn't get too far away. But like you are trained, but you do not know what's going to happen until it happens. And then you're going to react, and you're going to move past the reaction phase and into the, like, I have a plan phase very quickly. I hope, right? Some people stay in the reaction phase, and then we make them go fly other airplanes. All right, my last little tidbit, point 3. You got to rely on your training. I say that because I've relied on some training, and that's part of this, and I'll give you the short version, hopefully. After Iraq, fast forward about 13 CP years, that's Cave Praetorium for the world's greatest wild weasel squadron that lives in Japan. We are on our weekly tour, or yearly tour, to go to Alaska. We go to Alaska to do combat training over there, 69 airplanes to 100 airplanes, pretty good training. And we get about 2.5 hours into this trip. And we left Japan, headed east, that's where Alaska is, and about 400 miles east of Japan, 700 miles east of Japan, 400 miles south of Russia, if you do the map, it's kind of like that. I'm in a cockpit with no red lights, which are usually bad, and my RPM goes to just above idle. Significant loss of thrust. Just came off the tanker. Probably other than 1 year trailing smoke with Vaughn on my wing where I cinched down my lap belt. This was the second time in my career that I ever went, oh shit, this is happening, right? That was my reaction. And then immediately get into, okay, what do I do? Like rely on your training. So I have an engine that is operating not normally. There's no cap, critical action procedure. It's nothing telling me what to do right now. All I do is go, okay, well, I don't have thrust. Get rid of the extra, we were 3 external fuel tanks. We had a lot of gas, got rid of all that, climbed up. And it gets real when you're in the middle of the ocean and you punch off 6,000 to 7,000 pounds of gas because your life just got interesting. 2, go with nearest divert, is what I asked. What was my radio call? I think I was 3 at the time, sorry. 2 was we put 1 wingman in charge of what the divert bases are, the nearest place that we can land. 3 has a loss of thrust, which everyone loves to hear over the radio, especially in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And then I say 2, go with nearest divert. Snap north, 432 miles was Russia. 432 miles. That was the closest piece of concrete. And we don't glide that far. So that became a little bit of a problem. It didn't get any better. We started descending, I started descending, and eventually the motor quits. After about 3.5 minutes of running at just above idle RPM, my motor stops. Bummer, because the GEs don't really restart all that often. So the General Electric motors that your B coursers flew, we had a little bit more powerful one in the Block 50. So I go, well, that sucks. This bad story just got a lot worse. And as I'm descending, flying towards Russia over 55-degree water in a single engine airplane, I'm like, sweet, well, let's try to restart the engine. Why not? Do that 3 or 4 times, it doesn't work. Lots of things happen where I don't get the engine started. And then reality sets in of I'm about to go swimming. The training kicks in, right? So my training is, hey, this is affect your own rescue, is exactly what we were taught in survival training and water survival training, all that stuff, right? So I immediately go, hey, tanker, this is me, the dude that's got a problem. Call the Joint Personnel Recovery Center and tell them we have a maritime rescue happening right now. And they're like, what? I'm like, I am going to get out of this airplane. So start talking to people and make sure they are heading my way, because there's no place for me to go out there, right? So bottom line, I get into the clouds. I end up jumping out of the airplane about 2,200 feet above the water. Klepto-Katie's on my wing, circling, and some things that you guys don't even know, and you probably hate, like filling out cap sheets, critical action procedures, things they have to do every week. Your training is going to save your ass, right? So I pull the handle. I don't think twice about it. When it's time to get out of the airplane, you get out of the airplane. So I pull the handle. I'm in the parachute. Cool. Which punk can I see? No, who's the closest punk? Sizzle is not a punk. All right. Post ejection checklist. What is it? Cool. Every time, and I've been flying for like 15 years, that checklist that he got muddled through, like training's important, right? Canopy, you're like, cool, look up. And then LPUs, our life preserver unit, it inflates. Sweet, so you can swim, right? And every single time I did life support training, what did I do? Check. 100% true. And I remember saying that in the parachute. I hit my LPUs and I said, check. They don't inflate like by voice command. So I'm about to hit the water and I went, yep, I got LPUs. And I said, check, and I didn't inflate them. Pretty stupid move, right? Thankfully, they have this little device that when you hit the seawater, it goes and inflates for you. Or else my plus-size body was going to sink really quick, right? So I hit the water, really cold water, by the way, and I do the fastest ingress into a one-man raft that I've ever done. Like, we do this every couple years and it's usually, for me, it's like Shamu trying to get on the plateau at SeaWorld back when Shamu did that before, because we abused them. So, like, there's me trying to get in the raft, and boom, I'm in it, right? Some funny stuff happens with that, and this is just funny. First of all, I used to dip nicotine all the time. Why is this funny? Because I was in the middle of the ocean, and I had dip in my G-suit pocket that came out of my G-suit pocket, and it was in the water when I was in my raft. And I saw the can, and guess what I thought? Like, well, I'm going to be out here for a while. I should probably go get that dip. And then, pretty smart dude that I am, I go, got one in the other G-suit. So I didn't get out of the raft and go get it, right? So anyway, I'm in the raft for about 6.5 hours before I get picked up. Training-wise, why do I say that? It's important. Because I immediately hit the raft, and what do? Like, inventory your equipment, make sure that you got everything, and like start having fun, right? No, like I would set 30-minute alarms, check, send my GPS coordinates to the tanker overhead, because they're with me, and let them know what's going on. Oh, by the way, we were cell number 2, which is groups of airplanes that are flying, right? Cell number 3 knew that a dude in their squadron, the DO, is sitting in a one-man raft when they flew over the top of me on their way to Alaska. Imagine being in that cell, like talking to the guys. Banger Harding was one of them that was in there. Like, they were like, that was one of the quietest AOS deployments that they have ever done. Nobody was talking because they didn't know what the hell. They're like, oh, Fester is effed. Like, dude, it is out in the middle of nowhere. Like, there's no way this ends well. Somehow it did. But there you have it. Sharks and killer whales. This one's fun. Way up north, cold water, chubby kid, cold. 4 hours into this thing, 4 hours in, I am bone cold. Sea fog rolls in, and I am sitting in a raft, and something gets cold. We have little glare shield, windshield things that like you inflate and they keep you warmer, right? Not warm, warmer. So I inflate those because I'm getting cold. And now, like, I feel like a 8-year-old kid during a thunderstorm, and I'm under the blankets, and I don't want to look outside because something just hit the side of my raft, and I'm freaking the F out. So, like shark skin apparently is rough, and when it rubs the outside of a raft, it made the exact sound that I heard. Exactly. I'm like, I'm gonna die. I survived that, but I'm gonna get eaten by a whale or a shark. And then I go, come on, dude, get your shit together. There are no sharks up here. It's way too cold. Sigh of relief, go back to my training, 30 minutes. I'm going to let the tanker know where I'm at. And then I'm like, holy shit, killer whales. And I'm like, yep, I'm going to get eaten by a killer whale. So it literally took me 15 minutes, and I finally opened up the clamshell, the little wind protectors, and I saw that my seat kit, which is made of a waterproof canvas, was outside hitting my raft. And I tell you, that sounds exactly like a shark, right? So 6.5 hours in a one-man raft. You can do some amazing mental tricks with that. On that note, I will pause and go, the dudes in Vietnam that sat in Hanoi for years in isolation, like if it became nighttime, or if there was 20-foot waves, or my radio didn't work, I would have been a mental, like, small person. Like the fact that I talked to people and I was not isolated was huge. Talking to the tanker. The ones that sat in imprisonment for years, like in isolation, God, they are amazing people. Way stronger than I am.
Lest we forget.
Amen, brother. Fun with flares. So 6.5 hours later, a boat shows up, or a ship shows up to pick me up. They come at me, and I shoot everything I got at them, so to speak, which was awesome, like amazing. But they find me, get me picked up, and go through that. Getting home was kind of tough. Like, you're out in the middle of the ocean. I get picked up by a Japanese fishing boat, research vessel they called it, with some top grade salmon on board, research vessel. And then they hand me off to a U.S. cargo ship, 750-foot long cargo ship. I got a cool model of it that the captain gave me in my house while I was going off the side of the boat to get on a Coast Guard ship to get me back to land, to get me back to Elmendorf, to do some x-rays and make sure I'm okay, and then fly me back to Japan, a couple helicopter rides and this and that. And I got back to see my wife about a week later. Like, pretty crazy. From, hey, ho-hum training sortie, we're just moving airplanes from here to there, to that happening. You never know. And when it happens, you gotta rely on your training. There's lots of stuff that I didn't even think twice about, I just did. Because I've done it 1,000 times before, just like you guys do, so don't get upset. Oh, by the way, I am the #1 previous complainer of poopy suits. Poopy suits are anti-exposure suits, mom and dad. So when you hit cold water, like, you stay alive longer. I am a plus size kid, like sweat, like hated those things. If I wasn't wearing that thing, like, it's a completely different story. A week before that, I jumped and did some training, and mine leaked and they fixed it, thank God. Like, little silver linings, or else I was done. Probably one of the more proud things I have other than surviving that mess was the accident board president. It was a Raptor guy from Elmendorf. After the fact, came up, told me they figured out it was some corrosion on a valve that shut the main fuel line down. And he goes, hey dude, the pilot member, a couple of us, when we heard the tapes, he goes, I just want you guys to know that we were all pretty impressed with how calm and collective you guys were on the radios. And I, like, you until you're in a bad situation, I call them mama calls, like you're getting shot at, like, oh my God, they're shooting at me, right? Like, we were professional foreship, like, hey, 1 do this, 2 do this. Cheech McDaniel's my squadron commander, like, he's doing the good thing, I'm doing what I need to do, and like, it's cool in combat or training or bad days when you can look back and you go, man, the training worked. Like, I reacted the way I was trained to react. And that's what you guys have been trained to do, which is, I think, real important. Life support rocks. I say that and every chance I get with them. The coolest story of this whole thing, like the brotherhood or sisterhood that you have just walked into. I was stationed at Osan in 07. Finch, not Caggiano, different Finch was an Eagle pilot who was there doing an air liaison officer gig with me. Neither of us were flying all this and that. Years later, when this happened, 5 years later, he was at Nellis flying F-15s as an aggressor pilot. He saw a post that I may or may not have made on Facebook when I was at Elmendorf drinking some Jack Daniels with a couple of my buddies, about to get on a C-17 to go back to Japan. He saw that, and I posted the MV Manikai, which is the ship that picked me up. And Finch, with a couple, 3 other pilots from Nellis, the Brotherhood, flew to Long Beach when the MV Manikai pulled into port to thank him. I was like, dude, I still get teary-eyed. Amazing. Like the brotherhood that we have and what people are willing to do for you is pretty amazing. So with that, I'm going to shut up here pretty quick with some parting shots. This one goes back to when I was a B course. There was a cocky Academy grad in my B course. Like, it's like, dude, standard Academy grad. No social skills, thinks they're important. And now he's a wing commander. This wing commander. Bruiser. Like, dude, here's what this is the story I was thinking about. Like, hey, how can I throw him under the bus? But it's really throwing me under the bus. I was a captain. He was a lieutenant. Were you even a first lieutenant by then? Second, yeah, you're whatever. We were young. And we're sitting around probably drinking, playing something, doing whatever, doing what we do as young, indestructible lieutenants or captain. We somehow started talking about finances, because that's what you do as a fighter pilot, right? And I had made some comment that like IRA, like what are you talking about? And top rope, Bruiser's like, dude, you're an effing idiot if you don't have an IRA. And I'm like, I resemble an idiot sometimes. And I'm like, what's this IRA thing you speak of? Like, I'm paying off all my drinking trips in college still and all this stuff, right? That night I went home and I opened an IRA. My nest egg thanks you, Bruiser. So why do I say that? Like, come on, you're not going to be doing this thing forever. Like, be smart. Your flight pay, all that stuff, be smart with it. You can have a very nice life later after that. Cool. Unless you are the future Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, maybe boom. Like Tonic, probably. Sorry. I hope you guys aren't in the same year group. It'll be a tough competition. Unless you are the future Chief of Staff of the Air Force, you are going to get passed over if you stay in the Air Force. We will all get passed over unless you become the Chief of Staff, right? Or you're going to decide to go sideways. You're going to go to the reserves. You're going to go to the Guard. You're going to go, you know what, that's enough for me and I've done what I wanted to do. Mine was Squadron Command and I was pretty happy with that. But don't get butthurt over it. And that's a technical term. They can explain that to you. So here's what you need to leave the Air Force with. Your integrity, your dignity, and your family.
Amen.
It's easy. Don't make stupid decisions that's going to cost you a marriage or a kid or anything like that. The Air Force will always ask of you, and they will try to take from you. Take your time, do what's right, like try to be the best you can, right? But at the same time, like know that there is an end state, and it is not the Air Force forever. So be smart with that. My last point, second to last point, explain the why to others. Like I will try to, in a debrief, explain to someone why I did something. The punks, you're punks. You're like, you just want to know how to kill things, and all right. But 18 months from now, you're going to have to learn the decisions that the flight lead used to get you to the point where you could break things at the merge. Like, it's all going to happen. Like, you might as well start absorbing some of that now. If you don't understand the why, then, like, you are just going to have the world pass you by. That's important. The last piece of advice I have for you, standard. Don't suck.